If you think you have ADHD but you're still not sure you should get a diagnosis, then this video is for you. I'm gonna share the 6 ways in which my diagnosis completely changed my life and how I think it can change yours as well if you choose to get diagnosed. Hi, my name is Candice and I help you understand and manage your ADHD brain. In this video, I want to share with you why I think it's so crucial for someone who has ADHD to get diagnosed. There are 6 ways in which my life was completely transformed by my diagnosis. I've dissected this into 6 phases of this video, 6 words. And I'll start with the first one, which is understanding. My diagnosis brought me a whole new understanding of myself. Before my diagnosis, I felt like I was truly broken, that there were a lot of wrong things with me. And I just felt that everything that was wrong with me were shortcomings, that, I couldn't change them. I had tried so many times, everything failed. So I felt just like a broken ship. And previous to my diagnosis, in the year before, I was getting depressed completely. I didn't know what else to do, and I didn't understand myself. I didn't understand why I acted certain ways. I just didn't know why I was the way I was. And when I finally heard about ADHD and I got the diagnosis, I was finally able to put a word on all the struggles I had, and I was finally able to transform what I thought were shortcomings into actual symptoms of ADHD or results of symptoms of ADHD. And this was massively helpful. My ADHD diagnosis also helped me understand other people. So, for example, my peers and my professors who couldn't really help me, I understood that because they didn't know about ADHD, and I didn't know about it either, they couldn't help me and they couldn't really relate to how I felt. So it was really useful to see, things from their perspective now that I knew I was different. And the same goes for my parents and my family. I was able to understand finally why we had, so many arguments and so many ways we disagreed, and struggles in the family were explained by actually understanding my impulsivity, my hyperactivity, my inattention, lots of things where I thought I was lazy and, my parents could label me that way. I was finally able to understand that it was not the case. And this was so powerful to have that piece of paper that said, here's the combined type ADHD profile, here's why you show up the way you do. And then obviously in therapy, I learned a lot more about myself, and it was truly life-changing. The second word is forgiveness. And that's such a big one for me after the diagnosis. After the first phase of understanding and realizing that all my shortcomings weren't actually shortcomings, I had a huge phase of forgiving myself first. I realized bad things I'd done in the past, for example, cheating, breaking a relationship because of my impulsivity. All those things were linked to my ADHD, and I had to be really kind with myself and actually forgive myself for doing those things, those really bad things that I was ashamed of. I gave myself forgiveness, and I was also able to forgive other people. I was talking about my family earlier. They didn't have the information that I do now. Now they learn about ADHD the same way I learn about it, and they're able to accommodate for me. But before that, my mother didn't know about ADHD, so she couldn't accommodate for my needs. I can see that some resentments I had towards her were actually her not understanding my special needs with ADHD, and I forgive her for a lot of things now that I understand that. Another type of forgiveness is forgiving for the people in my family who also seem to have ADHD, and that was a really interesting one that I came to during therapy, where I finally understood that my dad might also have ADHD, and probably my mom actually, but my dad was the biggest wow factor because there were so many things that even, my mom and my family in general don't understand about how my dad functioned, that I was able to explain and then forgive the things that I felt resentment for. So, overall, getting this official diagnosis just helped me shed a light on so many things. And how I say the diagnosis is the first step and you need the proper, actual diagnosis from a medical person, is because then you kind of get access to therapy specifically tailored to your needs. So, CBT, for example, for ADHD people. This is during those sessions that I did those very important discoveries, and it helped me a lot. So the second word that you need to keep in mind if you get diagnosed is forgiveness, and this is going to bring you a long way. The third word, which is really connected to the second one, is shame. I think I mentioned shame in the previous section because it's very linked to forgiveness. I forgave myself for things that I felt ashamed of. I felt ashamed for having to write down everything, so I didn't do it. I felt ashamed for having to set a lot of reminders and alerts, so I never got used to doing that until I got diagnosed and I finally allowed myself to do those behaviors that actually helped me so much. Now I'm used to taking my notebook anytime and jotting down my thoughts, journaling any time of the day, writing things down in all kinds of places. I used to be very strict with myself on writing things in just one place. And yeah, I felt shame anytime something that wasn't really like every other people I could compare myself with. Everything that was different, I felt ashamed for. Also, forgetfulness, that was a really, really shameful subject for me. And anytime I forgot a book, anytime I forgot to give in a paper, I forgot about a deadline, I forgot a lot of things. And that brought a lot of shame into my life. But now, I don't feel so bad planning things last minute, being late to events. Obviously, I try to be respectful, but I don't blame myself and I don't shame myself for behaviors that are inherently due to my symptoms. I try to put stuff in place to avoid doing it too much. Shame is something that really changed since I got diagnosed. And now I'm able to say I'm still ashamed sometimes. And, it's something to work through in therapy and just throughout life, but much less than it used to be. What a better time than this to talk to you about Headspace, which is a brand I am partnering with and that I really deeply love and cherish. I use it every morning. I am currently doing a course, Coping with Cravings, which has helped me as I'm reducing processed sugar in my diet. It's actually also Mental Health Awareness Month, and Headspace has a lot of new content out there for this very purpose. Content of how to be more mindful at work and in your personal life, how to manage stress, and just overall improving your well-being. So I'm sure you'll find anything and everything you need on Headspace if you want to become more mindful and learn how to meditate. If you want to sign up to Headspace, go in the description box below. I get a small commission every time someone signs up. So you just click on the link, get redirected to Headspace and sign up. The fourth word is actually something I touched upon in the previous section, and it's tools and systems that I put in place after my diagnosis. So knowing that I had ADHD allowed me to first understand what were my symptoms, how my brain worked. From that first understanding, I was able to detect some patterns. For example, I was able to see that during arguments, I could get really, really angry fast and be led by my impulsivity, and that would really hurt my relationships because that would mean anger outbursts, that would mean saying things I regret or doing things I regret that would hurt my relationships. So once I understood that it was a way that ADHD was showing up in me, I was able to put in place some strategies and talk about this in therapy. I've worked on this tremendously and put a lot of small tools in place that have allowed me to not do it as much as I used to, and it has really improved the quality of my relationships. I have another example of a friend whose life got completely changed by the use of those tools and thanks to his diagnosis. So before the diagnosis, he was completely miserable because he couldn't get his life organized and his apartment was a complete mess, so bad that he couldn't even see his couch and the color of his couch. We talked a lot and I was able to tell, and some of his friends told him that he probably had ADHD. So he finally got to the point where he was getting diagnosed finally. And then he bought a lot of notebooks and started writing things down like crazy, like all the time, everything that went through his mind. And he found that it was actually what he needed to get the thoughts and the to-dos out of his head and finally be able to, plan his day and do something. He managed in a few weeks to completely clean his apartment so that he could actually welcome people into his house and not feel ashamed anymore. And I thought it was so beautiful. I have the before and after picture of his living room if you want some inspiration. As I mentioned, it's not perfection. It's not you get diagnosed and everything is well forever and after, but there are some intense changes in the first few weeks when you get diagnosed and in the next years to come after your diagnosis. And it's crazy what I've heard people tell me about getting diagnosed and how it impacts your life on a really, really deep level. Now, coming up next, I'm going to be talking about how my diagnosis allowed me to voice my needs and boundaries and completely transform my relationships for the better. I'm also going to share with you the last and most transformational aspect of my diagnosis. This part is going to help you get even more out of life with ADHD without even getting a diagnosis. So you can start doing this now. So stay tuned for that. But before that, please make sure you're subscribed to the channel, like the video, and share it with friends and family who might benefit from it. Now, the fifth thing that I talk to you about is voice, how to express your needs and boundaries. That is only possible once you know you have ADHD, you know what it means to have ADHD for you and how it presents in you. Then you're able to talk to people about ADHD and tell them, see that thing I'm doing? This is related to my ADHD symptoms. This is how you can react to me when I do this particular thing. This is how you can support me through my ADHD struggles. When, I'm being late for an appointment in the morning, maybe you can gently nudge me towards the door by saying, do you think you can be ready in 5 minutes? That's just a random example. But your diagnosis is going to push you to actually tell the people you love, tell the people around you what it's like to have ADHD and what you're ready to accept, what you're not ready to accept. What I mean by boundaries is you'll find some people who don't necessarily understand symptoms. For example, my partner used to not understand why it was so difficult for me to do laundry and to do other kinds of house chores. And I had to really sit down with him and explain my boundary. This is how you should talk to me about this. And my boundary is I don't want to be labeled lazy. I don't want to be labeled this or that. I want your support. And this is how I want you to support me throughout those struggles. So it's really important to express those needs and boundaries. And having a diagnosis with ADHD just gives you the validation to do so and the encouragement and the confidence to do so as well. Now, the last life-changing event and stage of getting diagnosed is what I call thrive. And this is when you get rid of the old narratives and replace them with new empowering narratives. So what I mean by this is before getting diagnosed, I was crippled with judgments and stories about myself that were really negative and just self-critical. And when I got diagnosed, I gradually started to realize those stories I was telling myself and those narratives. And those narratives could include things like, I can't read, I can't concentrate too much on one thing, I always cut people off, I am always late, I am lazy, I am unreliable, I am flaky. All those labels about me and all those stories about things I could do and things I couldn't do. And reading was a big one. I had always felt like I couldn't read books because I always felt halfway through the first page I was distracted by something else and I wanted to read another book, and then I started 5 of them and my mom was like, you can only go to the next book when you're done with the first one. So that meant I was never able to read because that wasn't how I function. And now that I've just followed how I want to read, which is have 7 books on read at the same time, I can switch between whatever's the most interesting at the moment, the most stimulating. The process of replacing those narratives is one that is very long and difficult, but that you can start anytime. You don't need to be diagnosed actually to do this. I just think that when you get diagnosed, you have had the time, as I said, to understand, build tools, and just build a greater understanding of your ADHD, which will allow you to actually notice more of those old narratives and turn them into new positive narratives. And I don't want you to get me wrong. Finding about your old narratives and replacing them doesn't mean downplaying the symptoms of ADHD. ADHD is a challenging disorder, and I struggle with it every day. I would say that most days I'm impaired by ADHD. But what I find beautiful about thriving with ADHD is that you can actually, with the knowledge of ADHD and developing tools for your ADHD, you can use your symptoms to your advantage. And that has just made me build a life right now that I wouldn't trade for anything else. And I think my ADHD really, really plays into this life and gives me this edge that, makes me me, makes me Candice, who has ADHD. Great, so I hope this video was helpful. I hope it made you see how impactful a diagnosis can be in the life of someone who has ADHD. And I hope this makes you reconsider if you thought that just thinking you had ADHD was enough. Go see someone to diagnose you officially. I really am convinced that this is the road to so many bigger things. And as I said, I listen to so many people tell me that their diagnosis changed their life for good. If you enjoy this video, then make sure to click on the screen to go watch my video on how to beat procrastination with one simple tool. Also, if you're interested in hearing about me and just about ADHD in general, then you want to subscribe to my newsletter by clicking in the link down below. It will take you to my website where you can just sign up for free and you'll get a brand new and fresh newsletter in your inbox every Sunday. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.